Welcome back to Reimagine 2020. I'm Yonah Hochhauser, and today I'm glad to be joined by Diego Gutierrez Zaldivar, CEO of IOV Labs. Diego, thanks so much for joining me.
No, thank you, Jonah, for inviting me. Great pleasure.
Well, I'm very excited to talk to you because I know a little bit about your background, but for our viewers who don't know who you are, you want to give us a rundown of kind of, who you are and how you got into blockchain?
Absolutely. I was one of the early adopters or developers of the internet back in the 90s. In 1995, I created a website for the main newspaper in Argentina that back then had 1 million subscribers on Sundays, like physical newspapers. Back then that existed. And I ride the wave of the internet, the early days of the internet on the web until it crashed in 2000. I kept going with some startups, and I always was connected to technologies that could disrupt society or in a positive way, no? So for me, always technology was a tool for social transformation. I also, in my early days, when I was very young, as a kid, even with my mother, I started doing social activism and going to slums of Buenos Aires. I helped found the Green Party in Argentina. Like I did many things. So the social aspects and the technological aspects were, separated in my early days. And then when I found the internet, they came together. I found a way of putting my two passions in one place. And in 2012. After, I kept doing, I had a web development company. I was helping entrepreneurs, younger entrepreneurs, do their first steps, start their companies. And I think it was, in 2011, I got in touch with Bitcoin, but I didn't get it, to be honest. It's like, I understood what it was conceptually. I didn't see the true potential of it. Until in 2012, a good friend of mine from the early days of the web brought me back to it. He was all excited. He told me, Dieguito, they call me Little Diego because I started very young, but I'm not so little now. And he told me, Dieguito, this is amazing. Back then in Argentina, we had capital controls. Now we have something similar, but it was almost impossible to move money in and out of the country, or very expensive. Even for something with the resources, it would cost you maybe a month or 10 days. And we did an experiment where he sent me a lot of Bitcoins and I sent those Bitcoins back to him. And we didn't have to ask permission to anybody. So for me, that was like my aha moment. I said, okay, this is something new. This is how like a truly open and inclusive financial system should look. And I decided to devote my life into it. First with this intuition that Bitcoin could be this tool for social transformation, that over the years it evolved into a vision of how to put these technologies for the service of financial inclusion. And also in 2013 with other partners, we started the Argentinian and later Latin American community, Bitcoin community, which is now one of the biggest and more developed Bitcoin communities. And at the end of 2013, I was looking for my place of application. And at the end of 2013, I decided I wanted to devote myself to financial inclusion, to see how these tools. And in that process, I realized Bitcoin was not enough for solving that problem. So I was looking for solutions to solve that problem. And I had a conversation with Nick Sau at the end of 2014, and I asked him, I think, because he wanted to know about the Bitcoin movement in Latin America, and I told him what was going on, my impressions, how Bitcoin was different in Latin America than in other places in the first world, because in Latin America, people really understand why Bitcoin is relevant, because we have economies that are so unstable. So that for us is really like a way of protecting our wealth in So I was discussing that, and at that moment, Ethereum was announced, not launched, but the idea was in the air, and I told him it would be great. It's a pity that Ethereum is like building everything from scratch. It would be great that somebody could like bring smart contracts into the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I knew from the La BitConf conference to Sergio Lerner, and Sergio was the first one to create a Turing complete cryptocurrency in 2013. It was called Quickscoin. So I reached out to him and told him this idea of bringing smart contracts to Bitcoin, and then he had a team already with 2 partners. So we were discussing this idea. They were already evolved a lot, and Sergio made a white paper that he released in October 2015 of this idea that was Rootstock. How to bring smart contracts. Sergio is brilliant, and basically this white paper put all his work for many years together under one conception. And at the end of 2015, we decided to start pursuing this objective. And into early 2016, we got the first investment, and then thanks to that, Rsk Rootstock exists today. That is the first smart contract platform secured by the Bitcoin network, because it's a model, it's a sidechain. So. That's how it evolved over the years. We were adding. We launched another spin-off that basically brought a third layer on top. So Bitcoin is the first layer for store of value. Rsk is the layer where you settle agreements among parties, and then the third layer that is peer-to-peer infrastructure services. It's called Rsk Infrastructure Framework Brief. That uses the agreement layer to settle disputes. So basically you have a peer-to-peer relationship with service providers. It's a sharing economy, but if something goes wrong, you can always go to the layer. You can go to Rsk or to other smart contract layer and settle the dispute. So that's what IOV Labs is doing. And last year we acquired Taringa, that is the biggest social network in Latin America in Spanish, and with 30 million registered users, with the aim of turning, bringing to life what we think will be the future of social networks. That is basically what we call a social marketplace. That is a sharing economy where everything within the social interactions, the economic interactions, create reputational profiles, create your reputational profiles, much like Airbnb or Uber create, but that reputation is in the hands of the people, not in the hands of the sponsor. So it's what I call a true open sharing economy, because nobody can keep your reputation for themselves. It's like so that's where we are, and our purpose is financial inclusion. So we are doing all these things with the aim of creating an open financial system that will serve those who are excluded from the society today, that are not served. But our idea is that we don't want to create a system that will be for the poor or we want to create a system that is so good, so efficient, so open, that will serve any human being regardless of their economic condition.
Well, that's so interesting that you say that, because so often in the crypto sphere, we talk about, mass adoption and getting people to actually use these amazing tools and technologies that you're developing, that we're talking about all the time. And it seems like there's kind of 2 ways of doing that. One is developing and building protocols and products that are better than the traditional system, saying like, hey, don't go to your bank, come use this system. But the second, which is specifically what I want to talk to you about, is we're seeing this very often in Latin America, where in other places around the world, but specifically Latin America, where people are trained to crypto and blockchain, not because, they're tech savvy or because they believe it, but merely because the local currencies are hyperinflated and there isn't political stability. And that has kind of rose to the top as a really good use case and really good adoption method for this new technology like Bitcoin. So do you think that this will be the true driver of adoption for the masses? You know, that we could build as many fancy protocols and DeFi products as we want, but at the end of the day, only the early adopters will use that. Do you think that this use case of what we've seen with Latin America, where the hyperinflation, and so there's the everyday people are going to Bitcoin because the alternative is losing all their money's value, or all the value of their money? Do you see this as a
I think in Latin America that's the use case. Also remittances is very big, like moving money across borders, because when there's a lot of people, for example, in Colombia, you have a lot of people from Venezuela, in Argentina as well, that was kind of ejected from Venezuela because of the economical conditions, and that people is constantly trying to help their families back home. So, and there's no good systems to transfer value in the traditional financial system. Systems are not properly interconnected, or they are extremely expensive. And for somebody that is in survival mode, maybe those 10 bucks that the remittance systems keep, it's a lot of money. It's maybe a week or 2 weeks of food. So people find out that Bitcoin is a way to get more value home, and I think that is a context that, of course, in the first world, I always say that in the first world, Bitcoin is, you can do it for ideological reasons, no? Because you think the money and state combination is not a good one, or because you are more anarchic in a way, or libertarian. So you can do it from a ideological perspective, but it's an option. And at the end, in today's terms, it gives you more of like an incremental improvement on some areas. Right. But if you go to Latin America, it's an exponential improvement on your life. It's basically, being confined to an economy that it's draining you from your resources all the time, or being able to protect your wealth, help your family. So it has a complete different dimension.
And how, this two-part question, because you've been very involved in this community. One, how hard is it to explain to people who aren't tech savvy, don't understand the technology, but do want to turn to this amazing use case? How hard is it to explain to them, one, that this is legitimate, two, how to actually use it, to actually make these trades, make a wallet, cash out, onboard, offboard? That's one part. And then on the second part, how likely do you think that these people who are using it just because they need to right now, if that necessity leaves, if, let's say, their local currency does stabilize and the political situation does stabilize and there is faith in the local currency, will they continue to use cryptocurrencies, or will they just revert back to whatever is easiest, like local currencies?
Yes, that's a pattern that I realized like pretty recently. That is basically what the crisis creates. It's more adoption, but on the user base. It's kind of interesting, because I would say the price rise is what brings new people. So it's like, so I would say adoption is usually more driven by expectation, but then usage is driven by prices. So what happens is, over the years, each spike in price in Bitcoin makes the news, because that's when the mainstream media really gives coverage to Bitcoin. Otherwise, they spoke about the bad things. No, it's and that's why we created the community back in 2013. Is because we were seeing that the media was always talking bad about Bitcoin. They were only saying, okay, this is a tool for drug dealers, this is a tool for evasion, fiscal evasion. Like, they were always like talking in a bad way about Bitcoin, and we wanted to show the other face of the coin, no? Like to say, okay, there is so much more. This is a tool for liberation. This is a tool for empowerment. It's a new peer-to-peer financial system. So we wanted to spread the word about that. But what I realized is at the end, big media takes people to Bitcoin when you have these like astronomical, appreciations of Bitcoin. And then a lot of people stays after that. And that is the people that use Bitcoin once the crisis comes. So that's a little bit of the dynamic. But definitely, I think people will remain using it because once they understand it's a hedge against governments that are not doing a good job, against oppressive systems, then they will keep it like that. Maybe they will change the amount of crypto they have versus the fiat they have, or versus other things they have. But basically, they will keep it. They will keep it. It's a tool that they incorporate in their life. It's not something transitional.
And you say that one of the big goals driving you guys is this financial inclusion. Is a way of really including everyone in this system that has historically kept people out. The have-nots out. The haves could play. The have-nots can't play. And so, what is your take on the rise of DeFi? That we're seeing, this decentralized finance where it doesn't matter who you are. You don't even have to know who the other person is. There is no longer any racial, gender, or any discrimination against the person for who they are. But on the other hand, you still need to have capital in order to be involved in the system. So what is your take on DeFi on a macro level, on as a whole, as the technology for the future of financial inclusion? And then how well do you think today it is serving that purpose?
Well, I see DeFi, the current DeFi, because the current DeFi developments are more around speculation. So it's like and I think, speculation is not bad. It's like any healthy economy has speculators and producers of value, or the real economy, and they need each other. Because it's like, that's why the futures markets were created. No, the guy producing wheat needed to know that he was selling the wheat at a certain price, and the baker needed to buy the wheat at a certain price. So they created these financial markets basically to make both ends meet. So all the financial tools and even the speculation, it's a necessary tool to create a fluid economy. So it's about balance. No, if you focus only on the speculation side, then it's a self-serve system, and it's a bubble that eventually will blast. But if you can connect it to the real economy and serve that it's in line with what you were saying, then you have something that is amazing. So I see DeFi as part of a bigger movement. That is the one we are chasing at RSK, IOV Labs since the beginning. That is basically the open finance. I like to talk about OpFi instead of DeFi. So also because DeFi is not so DeFi. If you look at all the protocols, there's maybe 2 protocols that are truly DeFi, and of course the base layers, Bitcoin, Ethereum, the base layers are DeFi. But when you look at on top, there's always some point of centralization, and that's okay, because I think you have a continuum of centralization, decentralization, and then you have protocols that are on one extreme of decentralization, protocols that are on one extreme of centralization, or they are not protocols, they are like services provided by entities, what is called as CeFi. So I think DeFi is the seed of this open finance ecosystem. So for me, it's extremely valuable. The tools that are being created in DeFi are amazing. Now what we need to do, and some protocols are starting to do that, what we need to do is connect these liquidity pools and all this effervescence in the DeFi world with the real economy. If we do that, then we have the open finance ecosystem that we were envisioning and pursuing. So for me, DeFi is amazing because it's like it's seen a big lab. It's like it's crazy. Things are born. They crash. They burn.
All in one day.
Flames all in one day. Then a new thing out of that is reinvented. So it's a level of innovation in finance that we haven't seen in a long, I would say ever in human history. And that was like, and this is accelerating, but of course, you know, things need time to harden. So all this innovation will like settle, and then from all this creation boom, what we will have is like a few emergent DeFi protocols that will become standards, that will become hardened, that will connect with the real economy, and then we will have something that is amazing. I mean, then we will have that vision of you know, having a full financial system running in a decentralized platform in multiple, because that's the other thing. I always talk about the Internet of Value, because for me, what we are doing is building a network of networks, you know, to create this financial infrastructure of the future that is peer-to-peer, is open, is censorship resistant. So what we are creating is a network of networks, an Internet of Value. And I think it's very interesting. I think in the next year we will have like maturation of many of these things, and we'll see. We are already doing some work on the slums of Buenos Aires, for example, with some DeFi protocols on Rsk, and so it's already happening. It's in a seed stage, but it's already happening. And the base for me for creating this open financial system is reputational identities, because it's like, that is the way you can relate to somebody that doesn't know you. You can get a loan from somebody. So reputational identity, because as you said today, to participate in the DeFi economy, you need to have crypto assets to put as collateral. So that what happens with people who doesn't have those, and I think reputation is the answer. If you create reputational profiles, then your reputation can become the asset you put as collateral to interact in these DeFi or open finance protocols.
And how does this reputation work? Is it kind of like your online digital identity, where it kind of combines, you know, all your information that you could sell to advertisers, and you could how does the reputation work?
Yes, it's basically I mean, we don't think about it, but you know, in our society, we build our reputation, and the reputation is basically a validation of events by third parties. It's not formalized, but it's like, if you interact with me over a certain amount of time, you know, you will build your idea of who I am, how I am. So basically, you will be a giver of reputation for me. If somebody else comes to you and asks, what do you think about Dieguito? Well, I like this and that. I don't like this. So basically, we are all like, creators of reputation for others. Institutions are also building reputational profiles, and institutions build around reputational profiles. So basically, what we can do with this technology, that's the basis of this idea, is that every interaction you have, if you learn something and you got a title for, even you can do it not for the full career, you can do it for parts. If you have those traces, if you have traces that are on your control, no, but you have traces of all the things you bought, all the things you sold, if you teach, you went to an event, if you give a talk, you have a certification of that, if you contributed to your community. So all those traces become your reputation, and that is valuable, because building that takes life. So basically, you don't want to burn that life, but if you protect that reputation over time, then you know, that becomes a very valuable asset.
Now, and this leads me to my next question, which is, you know, we've gotten the blockchain technology to the point where anything that's on the actual blockchain, we trust. You know, we trust if it's there, there's consensus. Everyone believes, okay, the blockchain says I have 2 Bitcoin. Everyone trusts I have 2 Bitcoin. But something that blockchain has not fully figured out yet is trusting the inputs to the blockchain. So for instance, you know, right now, you know, we're trying to do oracles. We're, you know, right now, anything that's on the blockchain, we believe, but you know, if we're trying to, like you mentioned, we have to connect the real world with the blockchain world. Making that connection and having that connection be just as trustworthy as the blockchain has still proven to be an issue. Like, for instance, with this reputation, if the reputation is is secured by the blockchain. So when anyone's reputation, I believe. But how is that reputation score getting its input? You know, let's say I go and I buy a car in the real world. How is the blockchain knowing that I bought the car? How is the blockchain knowing that I got a degree?
Well, that's why I was saying this, that, you know, you have a transfer of reputation from other parties, because at the end, what you will have is a hybrid system. You know, as everything starts to be built over the blockchain, that problem is gone. Mm-hmm. But you're right that we are in a transitional process, indeed in the early stages of a transitional process, where most of the economy, most of the interactions happen outside the blockchain. So somebody has to give attestation for that. So it's basically a transfer of reputation that you are doing. So it will be your university or your school that will sign those events. So it's like, you know, the person looking at those reputational traces will see, you know, that relationship and validate that institution gave you that reputation. So at the end, peer-to-peer reputation of people who doesn't have big reputations will be very likely less valuable than the reputation transfer from a bigger institution. That's why I think institutions have a role to play. I mean, decentralization gives you the option to choose to engage with them or not. But it's not that they still have a lot of value they can transfer if they start playing this game, and some of them are starting to play this game. Until you have fully, you know, things that are fully registered on the blockchain. It's the same thing happens with a lot of these DeFi protocols, that they need the price feed. They need to know, for example, the relationship between Bitcoin and the USD, or Ether and the USD, because they make decisions on the protocol level based on that data. And that data, because the volume of transactions exists on centralized exchanges, needs to be brought into there are ways of improving the oracling process of bringing, like, you can create a federation, you can have multiple attestations, you can do a lot of things to improve it, but still you have points of centralization. It's not fully decentralized. But in the future, if we have enough volume on decentralized exchanges within the platforms, then that information will come from within. It's not going to be needed. So then that problem. So we have to see this like in movement. This is it's a movie, not a still picture. No, it's like we are basically seeing the movie develop, and what we are seeing is we have an old infrastructure, financial infrastructure running where all the value is today, or most of the value is today. And we have this new fascinating small financial infrastructure that is starting to develop, and economically it has a fraction, you know, of the full thing. It's like, you know, not even a cent, 1% of the full thing, but it's starting to show that there's value. It's starting to show some differential value proposition, and slowly money is flowing from the traditional infrastructure into this new infrastructure, and until we have a flippening where this new financial infrastructure will become the mainstream financial infrastructure, and the other one will be the alternative. But it's a process.
Well, I mean, this is probably something that you know, you've lived through before. Like you mentioned, you were crucial at the beginning days of the internet in Latin America, where does this feel like deja vu for you? Where kind of
absolutely.
Like there's this new technology, and everyone's like, no, what? I'm not going to build anything online. What's an internet? What's a computer? So
that helped me a lot to understand it. I mean, I lived this process with a maturity I didn't have on the first one, because it's like, you know, of course, these waves are so disruptive and so difficult but having been in the first wave of the internet or the internet of information, for me, gave me a perspective that helped me a lot in this process, to be very patient, to know that we have to put like block over block and build over time. And that was crucial, I would say, for everything I was doing. I was always telling people in the community, you know what, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And when I say a marathon, I'm talking like 7-10 years. We are actually, I said this 7 years ago, so we are here. It's finally happening on a certain degree. I think in 3 years more we will have a fully mature ecosystem, and we will see the full potential of this. So I think it's but it's getting closer. I would say we don't need to wait another 7-10 years, but it's getting closer. Yeah.
Well, if we look at DeFi right now, which is very popular, most of it is built on Ethereum, and Ethereum is not keeping up. Let's say the gas prices are very high, it's very congested, so it's doing its job. It is being secure, but it's struggling to keep up with the demand, with the throughput. But you decided to build a smart contract system on Bitcoin. Why did you decide to build that on Bitcoin?
Well, the rationale was basically that, the Bitcoin network is a network with the biggest network effect. The Bitcoin asset is the asset with more liquidity. The Bitcoin security infrastructure, the mining, is the one with the biggest hashing rate. So therefore, the economical security of Bitcoin is the highest. And so my thinking was, if we want to build a financial system that will serve those excluded in our society, that they are in a very fragile position because they live day by day, they live week by week. It's not that they have so much room for the system to collapse and wait for a week to see if it comes back. So although I knew that building on Bitcoin was tough, and it has been very tough because Bitcoin is very reactive. Like they don't want innovation at a fast pace. So we have been finding workarounds. That difficulty of integrating with Bitcoin. I was sure that building on Bitcoin was a long-term good approach, and now we have 40% of the hashing power of Bitcoin. So that turns RSK actually into the second safest blockchain in terms of economical security. Wow. Of course, there are other aspects like decentralization, nodes. So that's why I very carefully is like, it's the safest in terms of economical security, which is one dimension of decentralization, but it's big, and I think it's like that was our vision, and that vision is becoming a reality. But still, if we don't, because I think Ethereum is basically paying the consequences of being the first mover. It's like there are certain things that if you do them on chain from the get-go, then you get to the point where Ethereum is, that you have a bottleneck, because basically the world state, that is all the registers of the different variables and account states, gets bloated, and then you need mega servers, so you lose decentralization because the actual servers that can validate the full network need to be very powerful. So I think Ethereum is victim of its own success, if you want. It's like Ethereum is here because it was so successful so fast. Because now we have the technology to avoid those things, that is going to level two solutions, like commit chains, payment channels. There's a new peer-to-peer infrastructure that is being built. That was the one I was mentioning, the RIF, the RSK infrastructure is basically that layer 2 infrastructure on top of the blockchain that enables you to scale in a sustainable way, in a sustainable and more efficient way, because transactions off chain can cost a fraction of transactions on chain. So we are in the moment where all these technologies, these layer 2 technologies are maturing, and some of them can process not only transactions, but also smart contracts. So even you can scale the business logic part as well. And I think Ethereum 2 would very likely incorporate all these things, and it adds sharding. So I think Ethereum will find a way. But our position in RSK is like, we maybe move slower, but we are like making sure that our ecosystem has the best practices, and instead of going to the blockchain directly, they use the upper layers. They use the third layer in our case, Bitcoin, RSK, and RIF. They use the third layer mostly because that gives them efficiency, and that gives them sustainability. So that enables the system to grow without collapsing the underlying layer. But I think transactions on blockchain will always be expensive. That's
Yeah.
To be honest, that's the nature of it. It's like
So is there a downside? Because like you mentioned, you guys do have that great economic security. Is there a downside though to building kind of smart contracts on the Bitcoin network? Would DeFi be able to succeed on RSK and RAF?
Well, we made another decision because we like what Ethereum was doing a lot. So we made another decision that RSK is a second blockchain, it's a side chain to Bitcoin. So it's not directly on the Bitcoin blockchain, it's on the secondary blockchain. And that secondary blockchain has all the features that Ethereum has. So any application that is running on Ethereum can be ported to RSK without modification. Indeed, a team already moved the Uniswap, and you have RSK swap protocol. Then you have teams that are taking pieces of multiple lending protocols, lending and margin trading, and are building, it's a platform called Sovereign. Then there are some protocols that are built with the same language as Ethereum, but that are unique to RSK, like Money on Chain, that created a dollar backed by Bitcoin. So it's a very interesting model. And also we created an interoperability bridge between Ethereum and RSK. So some projects are starting to port in tokens to RSK to use RSK as an operational platform because, now transactional costs are like 100, 200 times less in RSK. So, but again, if you just start using RSK in full without using this layer 2, solutions, we will get to the same point of Ethereum. It's not that there's no magic in this. No, so what we are doing is working with all these teams that are bringing also Ethereum solutions. So they bring it in a good way that it will be sustainable and will work for many years.
And whereas powering the DeFi on Ethereum is this idea they're able to mint stable coins by staking Ethereum. With you guys, it's a similar idea, but with Bitcoin, right? It's RBTC. Yes. Does it work in a similar way to how minting works?
It's exactly, the protocol itself, the MakerDAO protocol is different than the Money on Chain protocol, but conceptually it's the same. It's like you are taking BTC on RSK, we call it RBTC to make clear that it's on the RSK network. So you take BTC on RSK and you put them on the Money on Chain protocol, and then it needs to be over collateralized. I think one thing that is interesting on the Money on Chain protocol is that you can, the backing of the stable asset is one pool of assets. So at any time I can give back the dollars and I will get Bitcoin on RSK instantly. So you don't need liquidity providers. You don't need things that other protocols need. So the protocol is self-contained. I have the certainty that if I have a dollar on chain, I can go to the protocol and redeem it for Bitcoin at the price that Bitcoin has at that time. So that's it. That's very interesting. But conceptually, it's the same. It's like you put your Bitcoins as collateral. If you are a long-term Bitcoiner, you know that you will earn more Bitcoins because the idea of people putting there is that they want more Bitcoins. So you get more Bitcoins, and you enable that others can have an economy based on the dollar or any stable asset.
Well, I think if you guys want to brand it, you should call it hodling 2.0, where you're essentially you're hodling your Bitcoin, but having it work for you. Diego, you could have that. You could have that one for free, and you could use it. I appreciate you taking the time. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I really appreciate you speaking to me and really giving me that insight, not only from the lens of someone who's early on in Bitcoin, but also someone who kind of lived this before from the early ages of the internet as well. So Diego, thank you so much for your time and continue to do the great work that you do. And for all our viewers at home for Reimagine 2020, I'm Yonah Hochhauser. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Jonah.